What is the future of sustainable buildings? Hi, my name is Marcin Wojciech-Żebrowski and welcome to the newest episode of Urbcast, my podcast about urbanism, architecture, cities and many more. In this episode, I will be talking to someone who is very knowledgeable if it comes to the sustainable buildings. And this is also the last episode, which is done in the collaboration with the Urban Future conference that took place in June in Helsingborg, and that Urbcast was proudly the media partner of. And today I'm going to be talking to S.Anders, who is the Network and Consulting Director at the German Sustainable Building Council. When we sat together with Stephan back in June in Helsingborg, he used to be back then the director of DGNB for certification. And this is something that we will be talking about. We will talk about Sustainable Building Council, what is the Sustainable Building Council about, how to achieve the sustainable building if it comes to the German market, but not only, and what does it mean for a building to be sustainable, how can we achieve that as well? So why should we talk about it? I think that we often hear a lot about building sustainably, but I think it's even more important to talk about what does it mean for a building to be truly sustainable, and can the building certifications secure the new constructions being sustainable? We will be talking also about how can an expert like Stephan share the knowledge with local authorities who can become, thanks to that, more sustainable and climate neutral. I think it is important, as Stephan says, to step outside the sustainability bubble, because so often we fall into this trap of closing our knowledge because we are surrounded by likely-minded people and people who understand what we do, and we forget about how it is to share it with the external world, which might bring the real impact. This is important that the experts share the knowledge in the most accessible and understandable way and language. And that's why I decided to talk about this extremely important matter. We will be talking about how to transfer the knowledge about sustainable building between disciplines and also between various countries. Are the developers even aware of the benefits of building in a sustainable way? And also the last thing, very important, is what is the future of building sustainably in the world, but also in Germany. So welcome to the newest conversation with Stephan. Stephan, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm really inspired by your work. You are an expert on sustainable cities and buildings. And as I found out, you are trained as an architect and urban planner, but you took this kind of route of sustainability in your career. And maybe you could just tell something more about that, about your desire of the sustainable development of our buildings and spaces.
Yeah, for sure. So I studied architecture and urban planning in Stuttgart and also in Zurich. And in these times, the topic of first renewable energies, but more and more also about more and a sustainable view getting more and more important. And so I have a topic on my diploma, for example, about zero carbon cities. So it's still a relevant topic, I would say. And at this time, after I worked also at the university, so the professor where diploma asked me to work further on this topic. And so I came to more and more also to sustainable district development and we're looking to different districts around Europe. And this time there were also a working group founded in this German Sustainable Building Council where I work right now for. And the working group dealing with the question how to measure sustainability in an urban context. So I was interested in the topic for sure. So I worked also as part of the working group. And since then, I work more and more for the DGNB. And now I'm the director of the DGNB certification department. And so I work on a lot of other aspects, but all dealing with sustainability.
I would love to hear more about how you tackle those challenges in the German Sustainable Building Council. And sorry for asking this question so early. Sorry for attacking you with this question that I'm going to ask, because it might be a big one and hard to answer. But isn't it that while we build anything, we just produce so much of pollution, of waste, of CO2 as well? So maybe in general, we shouldn't build. What's your take on that? Maybe that would be the most sustainable way.
That's really true, yeah. And also we are dealing not only with new construction, we have also schemes for renovation, but also for existing buildings. We started with new construction, so maybe that's easier to develop, I would say, such a certification scheme. And then later, the topic of existing buildings getting more and more important. And now our main focus is on that. That's really true. So how to bring also our existing building stock to more sustainable and climate neutrality. What is a big challenge, yeah, I would say. Yeah, in general, yes, that's the case. But I also know that in Germany, for example, there are regions like the Stuttgart region or Berlin or Hamburg, who a lot of people will to live there, and so they need more houses and offices. And in other regions in Germany also, that's other case. But this is more on a political issue, I would say, at the end.
Can we try to unroll the story behind the certifications as well? Because it might be a hard topic for some of people. We might be aware also as designers that there are some certifications, but why is it in general important to talk about them, and do we really need to have them?
If you ask somebody what is a sustainable building, you will hear everything. For somebody, is it more or less an energy efficient building or passive house? Others say most important are the environment inside the building and or where the materials are coming from. So at the end, there's a different understanding that makes it difficult for a developer, for example, who want to build their really sustainable project to set really the right target, I would say. It's not so easy. There are different aspects you have to consider. And at the end, such a certification scheme could help somebody to have an overview, which topics are important, also to look how to measure this at the end. I heard here also a lot of in the conference about zero carbon and climate neutrality and aspects like that. And there are so many words for sometimes the same thing. But if you discuss also about the different definitions, it's also important to understand where are the differences. If you look only to the operation of the building or included also the gray energy, if you look also to electricity, and this is at the end, then the goal is totally different. And to set there the right boundaries and to look at the right aspects for sustainability, I think there's important to have their criteria how to measure. The certification process itself, it could help somebody to have the better buildings and also to bring all planners and clients all together to one common goal, I would say. Very often the clients say he want to have a sustainable building, but he do not really know maybe what is important for that. And also the architect maybe focus only on a part of the sustainability aspects. And such a scheme could help to forget nothing, I would say.
You mentioned architects, and that's something that I would like to develop, because what are the main kind of actors that you are working with as the German Sustainable Building Council? Is it mostly the developers or the designers? I mean, like, who has kind of the biggest say if the building will be built in a sustainable way? What do you think?
We are a non-profit organization, so and everybody could be member of an organization. So we have around 1,500 members. And they support us, and they are coming from everywhere. There are developers, there are architects, there are universities, municipalities. So this is one part. So we have more or less from every stakeholder in the construction industry. Some organizations are a part of our network. And on the other side, we have our academy where we also train everybody who is interested in the topic itself, but also to be DGNB auditor. Because DGNB auditors are the experts who consult the client with the certification, but also how to optimize the building in the end. Our clients for certification, there are developers for sure who build office building, for example, and know that they can sell the project better or demand is even higher if it's sustainable and certified. But we also have companies like Rewe or Edeka, Lidl, so sell food more or less. And they also use it for them to have their standardized process, how they build their new supermarkets. We also work together with companies who build row houses in serial production. And in the last years, we also have more and more companies who use this certification tool also for quality assurance. So they build for their own office building, for example, and then they use it to have their quality included in the whole project. And at the end, also to communicate it externally. But what I think is interesting also internally. So, for example, they have a company called Vector Informatics. It's in Stuttgart region. 2,000 employees, more or less. And they are looking always for good team members. And they say nobody knows us really. Everybody knows Daimler and Bosch. And so they will build the best building ever, also to find their new colleagues. It's also an aspect for them, for example. So there are different views on the topic, I would say.
What's your role in all of that? What's the role of the DGNB? Could you just say, in a nutshell, kind of, how would you define your work and you as the German Sustainable Building Council? Are you a part of a bigger umbrella, or you are kind of independently working only in Germany?
No, we are a non-profit organization. We are a green building council, I would say. In more than 70 countries in the world, there are a green building council. And there's an umbrella called the World Green Building Council. So this is the network. And we are working together on the general issue to bring sustainability aspects more and more in the mind of people, I would say. So this is something we work together. In some other green building councils, they have also developed their own specific rating schemes who are focused more on the local conditions, and in other green building councils use, for example, also existing ones. And we as a DGNB, our approach is always to adapt the scheme on the local conditions like climate, but also norms and language. And so we offer also other green building councils to get our system partner. And for example, in Denmark, we have a system partner, the Danish Green Building Council, also in Spain, in Switzerland, Austria, Croatia. And so this is our approach. And so the general goal of DGNB, of the organization, is to promote sustainable construction. And we do that in different ways. So as I said, we have this academy where we train people, but also we have a university cooperation with a lot of universities. We have this non-profit organizations where we do different events all about sustainable construction, and the certification scheme. And for us, certification is at the end a tool to bring sustainability aspects really in practice. And this is our role, to develop the criteria also further. So every 3 years, you would say, there's a new version. And we always discuss with our members and with experts what are the common important things we have to include now, that the buildings who will be certified are future-proofed also for the next 20 years or more.
You've mentioned a couple of different organizations in different countries, and I need to add one more to that. It's the Polish Green Building Council. And I'm adding this one because I was talking to CEO of the Polish Green Building Council, Alicja Kuczera, who was also a part of the podcast. And the second thing, I also been part of their conference, and I was really inspired how informative it was, because there are like people from different industries, like designers, engineers, and also people who are working with certifications and sustainability. And since you've mentioned that you are kind of part of a bigger organization, I'm curious how the knowledge transfer works like, because I think it's hard to transfer the knowledge because you also face way different challenges in those different countries, and you are also on different level if it comes to certain aspects of sustainability, right? You have way different kind of approach and challenges in Germany than we might have in Poland.
Yes, that's true. And there are some issues who more or less every country in the world are working on, aspects of climate neutrality, how to do that, how to set or define this aspect on a building case. So there are working groups in the World Green Building Councils, where people from different green building councils working together. Also, the different certification schemes influence one in each other sometimes, I would say. So the USP of the DGNB system, for example, is Next to others, they focus on life cycle assessment, so calculating of CO2 emissions and others. So that's a complex topic, I would say,
Yeah.
but we think it's really important and it's getting more and more important. We see now in Europe and also in Germany. And now we see that also other rating schemes around the world are included topic. And in same way, I would say that maybe the focus in the last years going also more and more in the health and well-being aspects, because we see that getting more and more important for a lot of companies. So we highlighted it more in our rating scheme. So there's an exchange, I would say, to different topics. And sometimes there are also some research projects were founded from European Commission, for example, where we are working together also on this.
I'm curious about one more thing if we talk about those differences in different countries, because the perception of housing developers, real estate developers in Poland it's a complicated case. So there are some bad projects and sometimes the developer really wants to max out the square meters of the apartment, and we might end up with a very bad projects with bad quality, very small flats. So there are some projects and some developers that have not such a good opinion in Poland. And I'm wondering, since you are working closely with many of them in Germany, what's the image and the perception of housing developers in Germany?
I think it's not that different in the end. So there has to be a strong municipality who say you only get the building permission, for example, if you do it in a sustainable way. Or maybe sometimes there are also ideas that maybe if you build it in a really sustainable way and certify, then you can add maybe one story more on the building. So it's also interesting for the developer. So such mechanisms, I think, are important. And what we see that developers are also looking to the market. And we see that there's a big shift to green. So every investors want to have their green building portfolio. There's also on the European level this so-called EU taxonomy, where now there's a regulation also which criteria a building has to fulfill, that the investor could say it's a sustainable one. And so it's getting more and more important. And I would say developers who are not curious to see about these aspects, maybe they will have really problems in the next 5 or 10 years to sell their buildings.
So how would you encourage developers to invest in the sustainable way of making the buildings? I mean here, the production, the materials, also making the designers to design in such a sustainable way? Because you've mentioned about adding this one more floor if you build sustainably. So I can imagine that it can be a benefit for the developer. But are the developers aware of that it might be a good business case for them if they really invest into building sustainably?
Yeah, I think we have to do that more and more. So some developers who are on the forefront, they know this, that they can sell the buildings better at the end, because there are a lot of companies who say they only rent in an office if it's in a sustainable building and it's certified. And in the residential sector, also in Germany, that's still in the starting point. So we are working together with different manufacturers from row houses and so on, and detached houses. But on bigger residential houses, till now, we only have a few certified projects. In the last years, I think everybody was looking for an apartment, so that was not that selling point. But now, for example, in Germany, we have their new funding from the government, and they say you get only the money if it's certified. And now there's a really big push in the whole market, or also non-residential buildings. And this is a big driver. And companies, for example, like Deutsche Wohnen or Vonovia, that's a big DAX stock market listed companies in Germany and in Europe. They also have committed already that they will have more and more sustainable buildings. And now they decided, for example, also to certify now in future every new building and all renovation with the DGNB in gold. And I think that's so the first starting point where also smaller developers will follow.
We talked about the developers, and let's talk about the other side, which is the tenants, the people who are renting or buying apartments. And of course, I know that you can't just speak for all of them, But do you think that in general, people are aware that it is a good idea to invest into flats that are either certified or built in a more sustainable way? Because I guess that if you are looking for an apartment, you really sometimes one of the kind of characteristics that you are taking into consideration is the cheaper the better, right? Maybe it's also the location, but also like, of course, maybe you can't afford like a house of your dreams, so you go after the lowest price. So what is the perception of people while buying flats? Have you heard of any voices of people saying, okay, maybe it's worth to investing into more sustainable building, even if it's more expensive?
Yes, I think so. So maybe most people do not really know what certification schemes there are on the market. And at DGNB, I think 90% of people in Germany, or 99, never heard about that. But the issues what we are dealing with, so to have their really good air in the apartment, low energy consumption, and so also lower prices in future, aspects like that, or also flexibility of the apartment, that maybe if the childs are going out, that they can sell part of this apartment or rent part of the apartment also to others. These are aspects where people understand, and people also say, okay, I will put there also a little bit more money, maybe if it's not 50% more, to have it all in a sustainable way. I would say yes, but developers or architects have to explain what are the added values also. That's also a topic for us for sure. Only to say the project is DGNB Platinum certified, then people maybe ask, okay, so what?
Yeah, exactly. What does it mean?
What does it mean? Yeah, this is important to say at the end. But if they know what is included, also aspects like where the materials are coming from, that it's from sustainable resource extraction. So these are aspects who are not directly a benefit for them, but I think the shift in mind is still there, that people are, for people is it important to know where the materials are coming from, and that they not destroy something somewhere in the world.
And what's your role in that? Do you think that you can somehow influence also the citizens, right? The tenants, the residents, that they are more aware of what's the cost of buying a home, and especially what's the cost of buying the one which is designed and built in a really poor way?
Yeah, that's our role. So we are grow, I would say. We are now 80 employees in DGNB, and in the last years, our main focus and clients were also professional developers. So this is our role, to speak with them and show what is the added value for them. But now also with the work together with the companies who are built row houses and so on. And now we are still in discussion also with them. What are the benefits at the end for their clients? And then we have to find other benefits or clearer benefits for them. And I think in the future, we will work also more and more at the end on individual building owners, that they getting know from the aspects of sustainability first. And further also about maybe DGNB, that maybe in 10 years, everybody knows the DGNB like an eco label also you have on the food, for example.
Before I ask you some more personal questions, I have one more about, again, sharing knowledge. If you talk to your colleagues from different countries, from different green building councils, from countries in Europe, do you have any common observations and challenges that you share and you can influence each other and share some good know-how, or the problems are rather too different?
You mean what are the common challenges for all of us?
Yes, the ones that you share. So basically, if you, for example, have some kind of a meeting, getting together and sharing some knowledge. So are there any elements that are repetitive in different countries? And someone is just saying about the problem in their country, and you can just say, yeah, I do relate to that.
Yeah. There are, I think here in Europe, so construction industry and also how we work together in a planning team is similar. Also from the EU regulation, I see there's a lot of norms and regulations who are more or less, they sound a little bit different, but at the end, they have a big overlap, I would say. And so there are the same questions there, how to bring a developer or not only a developer. I think more important is also companies who are built for themselves or people who are built to themselves to explain that why they should build it in a sustainable way and what benefit it has and what it costs. We work also together. We have founded an initiative for cities, so climate positive cities, and more than 70 cities in Germany 1 year ago. We founded that, are now part of that. And the idea is to bring them together and that not every city starting from zero with their thinkings about how to bring climate neutrality in practice. And what we see there, for example, is that they all have the same questions, you would say. Huh? They built a new district, and now the question is, how we define sustainability, how we define climate neutrality in numbers, how we can define that. And then the next question is always how to bring this in practice. Huh? Are there regulations? Is there a guidance or something like that who we bring to the individual building developers and so on. Huh? So I see there's the same questions on each city, I would say. And there we are working right now also on such tools, such guidance or some texts where somebody who are working in a smaller municipality who also do not have so much manpower there to develop their own criteria to consult everybody, that we support them a little bit, that they have presentation, for example, with the best benefits to do that for their government, to show that and to have there also some tools to help them in a way. This is something we are working right now on.
Stephan, I know that it's already 1 decade that you've spent with DGNB. So I think that it is very possible that you had some challenges during your work. And would you like to share, do you have one biggest challenge that you faced and something that you solved or maybe you are still working on?
Oh, I have to think about that. So yeah, that's true. I'm working for more than 10 years for DGNB and years are running so fast, I would say. There are so many things on the table and on the discussed, then we have to find a solution how to prioritize the different projects, I would say. This is the biggest challenge for me, and it's still an open question sometimes. Which project have the most impact at the end for sustainability in the urban context, and to prioritize the topics and to bring it really in the mind of people, that's a big challenge. Yeah? If you are so long in such an organization with such a great team, who everybody understand the challenges and know the tools, then you're also sometimes in a small bubble, a sustainability bubble. And very often when I come to a new municipality where we are the first time there, then they have some general questions and you have to explain always from the beginning. Yeah. And I thought in the last 5 years or so, the more and more people are informed and know what are the problems, and maybe also know the first have the first ideas in mind how to deal with that. But very often that's not the case. So they are just at the starting point. So this is some curiosity. I think maybe it will be also in 10 years the same case. There are some highlight municipalities, or we read a lot in magazines like Copenhagen or Vienna also. But there are so much in between. They are just started and they have the topic of sustainability is there not really integrated in the whole thinking and planning. So it's always a added aspect, and they do it when they have time, and they never have time, you could say. This is something I see very often. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned making impact. And this is something I'm also curious about. And could you, since we are here meeting at this Urban Future Conference, I think that I would like to ask this one single future-oriented question. Do you think that you will be able to make an impact which is enough to influence the whole market in Germany? So what do you basically think that the future will look like in Germany if it comes to sustainable buildings, and what will be the role of your organization?
Yeah, I think so, I would say. So when we started 15 years ago, for example, and we say we want to do a life cycle assessment of a whole building, everybody look to us and say, that's not possible. Life cycle assessment we have done for an individual product, but for the whole building, it's never possible. But we started with that, and we have problems in this way. For example, there are no database and how to calculate something if you have no data. But then also German government, for example, see that's really a big topic, and they developed their database who now everybody's using, or a lot of organizations and our experts are using that. And also we define their ambitious goals, for example, for building materials, and also their building manufacturers looking to the goals and develop their products also further. So we certified now around 9,000 projects, and if you compare it to the whole building stock in Germany, that's nothing. But I think we have a big influence next to the certification. So a lot of architects and planners who are looking to our criteria, universities are dealing with that and try to use that for their projects. And I could imagine now also with the funding of certified buildings, that's for sure a big issue. Then we can bring it really in a broad way in a lot of cities in Germany. Yeah, I think so that we could really have an impact on that. Yeah.
And my last question will be, I think it will be about education, as I would love to ask you to share a book recommendation, something that may be close to the topic of our discussion, but maybe not necessarily.
Yeah, then I have to share my own book. So I was co-editor of a book called Sustainable Urban Planning from the Detail editor in Munich. So I think then there with the book, where this was at the time where I worked noch on the university, there was always the question, there are so many books for individual topics for energy efficiency and biodiversity, and we want to bring it together. One book about sustainability, and maybe you can have a look on that. I think it's a good book to have an overview about the topic and go into detail with other books maybe.
It is available in English.
It's available, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Okay, Stephan, thank you. Thank you for the recommendation, and thank you for sharing the knowledge and the things that you do in the German Sustainable Building Council. I'm very pleased that you found a moment to share your story, and I'm looking forward to hearing more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the newest conversation. I hope that it was a very inspiring dose of information about building sustainably. And I'm very happy that Stephan agreed to share his knowledge, his very impressive knowledge about all the certifications and about what are the challenges and the things that we can improve while building our buildings, while planning our cities so that they are made in a more sustainable way. They are more climate neutral or more climate friendly. And we show the very needed respect to the planet, especially in the midst of all the challenges that we have right now. If you like this episode, you can visit my website as well, so you can find some more information. You can also sign up there for the bi-weekly newsletter, in which I add some interesting information or events about what's happening in the urbanism world. So please, if you feel like, tune in into this one. And I hope to talk to you very, very soon.